Hey everyone, welcome back to OnBase. I'm your host, Chris Moody, and today I'm very excited to talk to Alison Wyrick-Mendoza about uncovering customer blind spots with the Jobs to Be Done framework. Alison, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Happy to be here.
Well, I know we have an action-packed episode today. We're both in North Carolina, which is great. So we're enjoying rainy days probably today. But one thing I love to start with, if you could tell folks about your journey and what led you to what you're doing today.
Yeah, so I love this question because I have a non-traditional path, and I think it's important to share that with folks who may be in the same situation, and I think it could be inspiring for folks to hear. So I actually started my career as an international flight attendant with Emirates Airline. This was a long time ago. I won't give you a time frame, but it was a long time ago in my early 20s, and that experience, it changed the course of my life, most certainly. But really, what it was is it gave me a global perspective, which I now use in business today. And what I like to say is that a lot of people learn cultural nuance through theory. So they just learn about it and read about it. But I actually lived it day to day, living and working in the Middle East and working with so many different nationalities and cultures. So that's where I started. And since then, I have had a progressive career journey from in-flight services to PR to sales to product to marketing, and now in R&D. And I would say a bulk of my career was in a commercial function, and I'm now getting to explore how can I use what I learned in commercial world in the engineering and R&D world. Really, it's just I enjoy building bridges between business, between technology, and between people. And I've ended up in an R&D role where I get to do that with great fun.
I love that. Yeah, there's no substitute for world travel. So as soon as you started talking about that, I was like, yeah, I know where this is going. That's awesome. Okay, the Jobs to Be Done framework. For folks who don't understand what that is, could you give a little bit of an explanation about how that works?
Yes. So I'll start by giving credit where credit's due. So a gentleman named Tony Ulwick is the original developer of the methodology, and he works at a company called Strategist, or owns a company called Strategist today. But he worked at IBM, I believe, in the 1980s timeframe, which is where he developed the Jobs to Be Done theory, and it's obviously evolved some over the last couple decades, but highly relevant in today's world, whether you work in product or marketing. And at its core, what Jobs to Be Done, or JTBD, as you'll hear it referred to, is that we solicit customer insights to serve them better, and that customer needs, or rather, we'll say customers don't buy products to address their needs; they hire them for what the products do. And so if you can understand what that underlying job is that they've hired your product to do, you can innovate around that. And that makes your solution, your innovation, your product, what you're offering to the market, stable over time. I've said before that we don't really have to worry about product market fit if we've built a product on the Jobs to Be Done framework.
Oh, I love that because the jobs are always the most important, right? It's always tied to the customer pain, the customer benefit. The show we titled Blind Spots. What are some of the tangible revenue opportunities that you think companies are missing when they don't understand customer jobs?
Some tangible revenue opportunities missing when you don't understand jobs. Well, number one, you may be building the wrong product, and I'll simplify it a little bit here, but there are many types or approaches to innovation, and one of them is technology driven innovation. So you let what the engineers think is cool drive what you build, right? And to some extent, especially if you work in an organization like Honeywell, you have advanced technology, and that approach serves its purpose in some places. However, when it goes to when you go to actually launch a product and build a product, if you've only built what the engineer thinks is cool versus what the market actually needs, you might struggle. Another is competitive driven innovation. So what are my competitors doing? And I see a lot of in business strategy in general, a lot of folks that start and go, okay, let's do a heat map of our competitors, right? And let's do a SWOT analysis and see what our competitors are doing, and let's start there. And I say all the time, we'll do that later, if at all. Let's start with understanding the customer and what their actual problem is. And quite honestly, I might not even care what my competitors are doing because they may be solving for the wrong problem as well. So it's at that point, we're both chasing something that's not real. And so I think that using a jobs to be done framework allows you to build the right product from the very beginning. And I'll add on to that by saying that it's the framework allows you to ask the questions that understand the actual behavior that the customers are doing, that you can observe, and then build to solve solutions that you've observed that they're doing through their actions. A lot of times, companies, when they do voice of customer to talk to customers to see what should we build, what should we bring to market, they'll say, what would you like to see out of this product? Or what do you think about what I've built? Or if you could change one thing. And all three of those are hypothetical questions. And in my world, I say no hypothetical questions allowed. I want you to sit and observe actual behavior.
I love that. I love that. I mean, I came up through product management. So a lot of the voice of customer training is just ingrained in you to really understand your customer. Are there any other techniques that people may be used to with voice of customer that you think fail to capture those true needs versus JTBD, right? Like the jobs to be done. You just hit on a very important one with hypothetical questions, right? Are there any other traps that you see there?
Yeah, I think one thing that I see, especially in corporate America or corporate world, will say is an obsession with process. And I do think that process is necessary, and it serves great benefits. However, what happens when you have a legacy process is it locks in, and it can restrict innovation, or it can restrict thinking outside of that process. And so that would be one area that that I think we have to watch out for, as we're, especially companies like Honeywell. We're over 100 years old, right? We've been around for centuries, and there have been many people that have held various roles inside of this organization that have brought their own playbook. And if we don't challenge that from time to time, we will miss out on opportunities to build new, necessary, and eventually products that perform.
I love that. Yeah, and centuries old. I mean, that is a very important reminder. Honeywell has been around for a long time. So lots of iterations and things that you've probably lived through as a company. You talked about the bridge building at the beginning. So in your journey, how you love to connect different things. How can product managers bridge the gap between engineering constraints and job focused solutions?
Yep, that's a great question. So what I would say first is the language that you use matters. And I'm a linguist by education. If you want to just add something more to that non-traditional journey, I'll throw that in there as well. So I've studied the science and art of language, and how we can use communication to engage with others and our world around us. And so the language that we use matters. And so as a product manager and offering manager who is working with engineers, engineers think in specs, right? Whereas product folks think in customer outcomes. A good one thinks in customer outcomes. So rather than leading with an outcome that an engineer might say not technically feasible, lead with the spec, but do it in a way. So an example would be, um, if you're building a product and the customer needs quicker download speed, right? And if you just tell the engineer, that's my spec, I need quicker download speed, he might say, I can't do that. today with my existing technology available. We can't do that. But if you, and I guess I'm going to retract. I said lead with the spec, and I meant lead with the customer outcome. But if you instead lead with the outcome and you say, well, the customer just needs to be able to access data within 3 seconds of clicking this button, right? What they're going to do is they'll now innovate around that need, so that it doesn't matter how you get to it. And I'll oversimplify it a little bit here, but it doesn't matter what you do technologically. If you can get the customer to be able to download and access that information within 3 seconds, you've solved their job to be done. And so it almost releases engineers from this strict framework that they've been taught to operate in. And you can do that through language.
That's great. Such a cool background too. I feel like every answer you're kind of revealing even more that's very important to what you're doing today, which is really cool. And the innovation points there. You talked about strict and some of the training. I think a lot of companies have very well established product lines that have been in manufacturing or any industrial type of trade, especially. I was in medical devices, there was this product and that product. Does that hinder some of the job based innovation?
It does, yeah. So what happens when you have, this core product offering, one that generates solid revenue for the organization, right? It's your backbone. It's hard to, at least from an R&D perspective, it can be hard to shift investment dollars to other areas for growth. At Honeywell, we look at what new products can we build, and then we also look at adjacent markets. So new product and new market. But this is riskier, right, than it is to just grow my core. So that's a challenge in its own, is how do you convince the folks that need to be convinced that you need to reallocate the funding. But what happens is we end up, when we rely solely on our core and we don't have the processes or the tools in place to help us think beyond the core, we end up optimizing for what we know. We optimize the known, as I've said. And so, that will restrict and keep us from being able to explore new opportunities that we would otherwise be able to explore if we were to move outside of that core and into either new products or new markets. But it's just, we get stuck with, well, this works and we know it works, and it's worked for 50 years and it's growing, and it's growing at an acceptable rate, we'll say. And so let's optimize it. Let's just nurture the core.
Well, we know that Honeywell's been around for centuries. You've talked about that. How has the jobs to be done framework helped to shape your approach to innovation at Honeywell?
So personally, how I look at it is it's a two-part approach. So jobs to be done is one part, and then behavioral science is the second piece. And these two go well together, we'll say. And so behavioral science is the study of all aspects of how humans make decisions, right? And then we know that jobs to be done is the framework for addressing unmet needs. So if you blend those two together, you're able to look at it from both product and marketing perspectives of, well, how can I watch the customer, watch how they're interacting with their day to day, understand their underlying jobs that they need to do each day, right? What are their needs? And then how do I build something and then market it in a way that it is, I can influence them to want to adopt whatever it is that I've built. So it's this multi approach between product marketing and jobs to be done and behavioral science that I personally have found to be the most rewarding combination for innovation, or innovation approach, say.
And with all the talk today about AI, for a company that's been around for over a century, how are you thinking about AI at Honeywell?
So this is the topic of the year, we'll say. We had large investments, and we've been investing in AI for several years, but we had large investments and large commitments in 2024, especially, some of which I had the honor of being a part of. But we are committed, and we've stated publicly, we're committed to Gen AI in particular for growth, for innovation, and for productivity. We estimate that we had 120 million in savings recognized in 2024 alone, thanks to our Gen AI initiatives internally here at Honeywell. And these are, tasks like streamlining processes or eliminating repetitive tasks, and basically opening up time for our employees to do more strategic work rather than the day-to-day.
I love that. $120 million is huge. So that's a pretty good start for the year, right?
And I think it's just the tip of the iceberg. I think it's a kind of a multi-prong here. As the tools evolve, as we extend the adoption internally, and we find more use cases for the technology, we'll only see that grow. And it's really exciting that we've committed to this new digital transformation in the way that we have.
Yeah, I love that. And when you think about predictions that you hear in marketing, a lot of them are around AI and how things will change. But what's one prediction that you think will miss the mark?
So I have two thoughts on this. The easy one first. I'll say that a lot of people ask the question and they say, are you adopting AI? If you're not, you should. And that's usually where the conversation starts. It's very important, and you need this in your strategy. Make sure you're doing something about it. But I think more importantly, we should ask not, are you adopting AI or are you using it, but more so, the biggest concern or biggest area that we may not know will be a problem is underestimating the power of Gen AI and underestimating just what its capabilities are and how it can help us. We know that we need to use it, but what scares me is the thought of an entire department, we'll say for this instance, for example, a marketing department who underestimates the actual power of the tool. And the second part of my answer is that if you use AI for simple tasks, it will give you simple output. But if you use AI, this is specific to marketing here, if you use AI to do harder tasks, we'll say like segmentation or strategy or positioning, for example, you will have more impressive output. So we all know what goes in comes out, right? But I think a lot of organizations are starting with the easier use cases or the common use cases, and I think if they uncover some of those harder use cases, they'll reap the benefits tenfold.
Yeah, great. That's an awesome answer. What do you think is the biggest challenge today in B2B marketing?
I would say the biggest challenge today, this is a hard one, um, to answer with just one. And I work in industrial, in manufacturing, right? B2B manufacturing. So I have that lens on it. Um, but for marketers in the B2B space, in general, I think that I'm going to say content. And then to evolve on that slightly, it's that the channels, first of all, that we consume content are evolving rapidly, right? Even if you just look 5 years ago, it's night and day into what channels we access information on, even in a B2B space. But also, I would say that our expectation as consumers for how the content is presented to us is rapidly maturing and also evolving. And so as the marketer, on the other end, how do you keep up with all of the change with the channels and how you deliver and distribute your message, but also how you develop the content? And again, this is where I think AI plays a large role in advanced content development and real-time dynamic content development, because I do believe it's only going to continue, that we expect it to be more and more dynamic, personalized, relevant, in the moment, as we go forward. I will say one caveat to that is that I do believe that there's going to be more value placed on the human to some extent, and having that human connection, and knowing that this was either developed by a human or a human's involved in some way. I actually host a communications course here at Honeywell for my colleagues, as a hobby, we'll say. And my slogan that I share when I convince people to come into the training is that, you know, machines and computers are great for efficiency, right? And they're not going anywhere, and they're only going to become more and more capable. However, humans thrive on connection with other humans, and so we shouldn't forget how to connect with other humans, because that's going to be very important going forward. I think we got a little bit of a preview of that with COVID, when we didn't have face-to-face and in-person communication. But as life becomes more digital, it's going to be even more important that you can connect with humans.
I completely agree. I don't think, yeah, jobs may change, but I don't think it will replace humans to that point, because you'll always want to trust someone with any purchase or any technology you use, which leads to the next question as we're entering the lightning round here. So these are the
Okay.
quick hitters, right?
Okay.
What tools or technology do you recommend to our listeners?
Okay, so this is a personal recommendation. I use it in my personal work. Um, Google has a tool. It's a research assistant. It's new. It's called Notebook LM, and it is revolutionary. I would say it's really easy to interact with, but it's basically, if I could summarize it in a sentence, as a marketer or a communicator, I use it in someone who maybe will put a little strategic hat on. It's excellent for A/B testing. So what would this look like if this and this were together? And using Gen AI, it gives you a response. So I would say, if you're not already using Notebook LM, try it. It's free. Highly recommend it.
Awesome. Yeah, we will add that to our list. You mentioned air travel. I know that you have read plenty of books flying around the world when you're not completely busy and swamped, but what are some of the books or podcasts or newsletters that stand out to you?
This one's hard to choose just a few. I'm a big reader. I want to give a shout out to James Clear for his 321 newsletter. If you don't subscribe to it, you must. As soon as you finish listening to this, go and sign up. I have subscribed to his weekly newsletter now for, I think, since inception, several years. And every week I forward it to a group of people in Honeywell. We've built a following of about 50 people that enjoy getting his message. It's very simple to digest. 3 ideas, two quotes, and 1 question. But highly recommend James Clear. Of course, Thinking Fast and Slow, Daniel Kahneman. It's Old Faithful for behavioral science and applying that to jobs to be done theory. And then also say, any book written by Professor Jonah Berger. So he's a professor at Wharton, professor of marketing. I have found his books to be, I have dog ears on every page. And as a marketer, it's a playbook that I can pull at any given time and get real practical guidance from his books.
Great recommendations. I love those. So we will add those to our list too. Who inspires you in B2B marketing? Who are the folks that you look up to?
So I've got folks that I look up to in marketing, and then I want to talk a little bit about customer experience too, because I think that's important to acknowledge. Some folks that are doing that really well, that I've had the pleasure of working with. But there was a duo, if I can combine two into one and call them a duo. Two women I worked with when I worked at GE, and Liz Schmittu and Chandler Davis, and they have since moved on from GE. But they together they are the essence of the art and science of marketing. So Chandler is a data-driven demand gen expert, and Liz is a brand equity and storytelling expert. And so together you get this wonderful mix of art, again, the storytelling, and science, which is the data-driven marketing. They work together now at a new company in advanced manufacturing, and it's really great watching all of their work come to life there as well post GE. And another person who I want to give a shout out to is Emily Carr from Google. And I met Emily through a negotiation that we had last year and a partnership with Google that we announced late last year for development in AI with Google Cloud. And Emily is an engineer, and she has this unique ability to connect customer experience with enterprise tech. And that's not easy to do. And I'll credit her ability, her listening ability, and her her collaboration capability. But it's really the customer experience piece that she really gets, but in tech, and in enterprise tech. And I'm sure that she collects great feedback from all of her interactions with her customers that hopefully she's feeding back into her teams where appropriate. But it's just been a joy to work with her, and she's a master of her craft. And I would include her in that list as well.
Awesome. Great recommendations there. Awesome praise, too. I mean, I love how you described each of the folks. And look, the most important question of all, Alison, is how can people get in touch with you after this episode?
Yeah, so I'm very active on LinkedIn. So it's www.linkedin.com/n/Alison W. Min, I believe. Yes, Alison W. Min. And I am on the platform every day. If you message me, I'll try to respond. I share many insights on jobs to be done. I know we barely brushed the surface today, but you can see through my feed a lot of thoughts and practical. Again, I'm really big on practical guidance. So how can I go and apply this tomorrow in my work?
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for a great episode today.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. I'm really happy to be here and glad we got a chance to talk about it.
All right. Well, we will talk soon. Thanks.
Thank you.